Sunday. Happy Sunday, everybody. How you doing? Good to see ya. Hope you all are doing well. I'm Cthulhu. Hello, hello. Yeah, we're here. I had a work shift yesterday, so I couldn't do SCP Book Club at the usual time, so we're doing it today. So yeah, there you go. Yeah, today, we are finally wrapping up the Anti-Memetics Division, specifically the first series of Anti-Memetics Division tales, titled There Is No Anti-Memetics Division. We are concluding with the fifth and final tale in that series, Your Last First Day, which brings everything to a head and concludes this series? Question mark? If you've read it already, you know what I mean. But if you haven't, well, I guess let's dive right in. So Your Last First Day picks up right where Case Colorless Green left off. Marion Wheeler, at the end of Case Colorless Green, decided to take matters into her own hands about SCP-3125, decided to hold her breath for 3 minutes to not inhale any amnestic gas, so that she would retain all her knowledge about SCP-3125, and then decided to try to get to a whole other facility to try to find this machine that supposedly can stop it. And now, as this tale picks up, a tornado of violence and destruction is tearing through Site-41 and through the minds of everybody working at Site-41. Ceilings are being brought down. The site pharmacy is a sucking hole at the side of the building. The armory is buried. That's why she had to go through Area 9 and is now toting anomalous weaponry instead. And this is where we get the clearest. We saw a little bit of this with Paul Kim at the end of Case Colorless Green being sort of possessed by 3125, but we get more details here. The Anti-Memetics Division operatives she meets in the corridors are all broken, some of them curled up and raving while their minds evaporate and they die one memory at a time, some infected with a collection of ideas which compelled them to shout out guttural phrases in strange languages and to procure blades, never guns, and work on those demented victims and each other and themselves. Wheeler doesn't recognize any of these people. Their faces are all wrong, torn up with hatred and misery and vindictive glee. She then thinks it's her first day, and realizes that doesn't make any sense, and starts to realize that 3125 has been sort of eating away at her memory. The first thing it did when it saw me was eat everything I knew about the division, and then realizes she went to the pharmacy and took the most powerful nestics there, and basically, as they describe, Class Z nestics permanently destroy the subject's ability to forget. The result is perfect eidetic memory and perfect immunity to arbitrarily strong antimemetic interference. She can see everything. There are extra buttons on the elevator control panel, the lowest of which, the 30th floor below ground level, she somehow already pushed. The walls of the elevator are covered with graffiti scrawled by the desperate and dying, people whose conceptual presence was eradicated from reality years earlier by the Aleister Gray antimemetic kill agent, reducing them to the level of ghosts. Aleister Gray, of course, being the antagonist of Introductory Antimemetics, a tale earlier in this series. In one corner of the freight elevator, there is even a half-corpse, unidentifiable, so many layers removed from reality that not even flies can smell it, its cells winking out of existence asymptotically over the course of years. She can hear a long, alarming drone noise, a continual roaring which has the texture of ambient noise and is continually getting louder. It's as if that it has been there for her whole life, and it's only now that she's begun to hear it. Alerting the... But yeah, this is the details about Class Z. The human sensorium routinely generates huge amounts of data, and the human brain is adapted to discard almost all of that data nearly immediately. Altering the brain's behavior to retain that data is extremely dangerous, even for short time spans. Hey Chim, how's it going? we're finishing up the last tale in the There Is No Antimemetics Division series on the SCP Wiki. So yeah, good to see you. And she finds the plan. She doesn't remember it. She bootstraps it from the first few principles, in a handful of minutes, just like she's done 100 times before. I know how to beat you, she says. No, SCP-3125 says to her. You don't. SCP-3125 doesn't have a voice. Of course I do, it replies. SCP-3125 is a 5-dimensional, anomalous, metastasized mass of bad memes and bad anti-memes and everything in between seeping through to our physical reality. It isn't coherent, and it isn't intelligent. It can't communicate. This is an auditory hallucination. SCP-3125 scoffs. You know what I hate most about you, Marion? You're consistently, eternally wrong, and yet you're still alive. All those lost battles, every year of that entire lost war, but somehow you always cobble together enough dumb luck to walk away unscathed. The eternal sole survivor. You don't deserve that kind of luck. Nobody does. What I think is interesting about this passage is it's never entirely clear if this is actually 3125 literally speaking to her, or if it's somehow causing her to project all this into her. That this is some sort of not speaking in the conventional sense. Sorry, I'm very phlegmy. The weather's been changing like mad. If it's some sort of projection into her brain, or if it's literally it taking the effort to speak. Never made clear. I don't think it needs to be. I just think it's interesting how open-ended it is. While it's talking, she leans hard on the ray gun. There's an airlock at the far end, built from ultra-toughened white metal alloy in Bart Hughes' established style. Someone has to be last, she says, gritting her teeth. Someone has to be the best. Your team is dead, 3125 says. Their minds have been pulled out like eyeballs. They're hollow people with holes in space where their brains were. The war is over, finally. It's just you, Marion, a division of 1, dying from nestic overdose 200 meters underground, cared for by no one, known to exist to no one, up against an immortal, unkillable idea. Behind her, she hears the freight elevator close up and return to ground level, and she knows that someone has summoned it, intending to pursue her. Ideas can be killed, she says, stepping into the airlock. How? With better ideas. If something can cross, and this is where the basis of her plan, and presumably what was Bart Hughes' plan before he died somehow, that we never know. If something can cross over from conceptual space into reality, taking physical form, then something can cross in the opposite direction. It must be possible to take a physical entity, mechanically extract the idea which it embodies, amplify that idea, and broadcast it up into conceptual space. A bigger idea, a better idea, one designed specifically to fight 3125. An ideal, a movement, a hero. The machine Wheeler needs to build is the size of an Olympic stadium, and she doesn't have a fraction of the heavy memetic engineering experience to do it, let alone the material resources or the time. But she knows, someone taught her, she doesn't remember who, that an Anti-Memetics Division operative is as good on their first day as they're ever likely to be, and the same must be true of the division as a whole. She tells herself, we won this war on the day it began. When we encountered 3125 for the first time, we built this bunker. Bart Hughes faked his death and sequestered himself here so he could work uninterrupted, while the rest of the division held on for as long as humanly possible, buying time for this moment. I know this is what I did because it's what I would have done. So it seems like this is all coming to a head. They have the solution. Bart Hughes has been working in secret to build this machine, and she's the last piece. She's the final component. Hughes, she shouts into the void. It's time. Nothing comes back but the echo. She glances up for a second. The space is empty. The castle-sized memetic amplification/broadcasting unit, which Bart Hughes was meant to be building, is absolutely absent. Hughes himself is absent. Maybe the entire machine is anti-memetically cloaked, she wonders momentarily. It would be a smart way to conceal the operation even from the rest of the Foundation. But her brain is curdling in the strongest nestic drugs ever manufactured. There's genuinely nothing here. Almost nothing. She finds a truck. There's a weird-looking machine on the truck. It's the antimemetic equivalent to a hydrogen bomb, the division's answer to a Site nuclear warhead. Activated, it would contaminate Site-41 and everything and everyone on it with antimemetic radiation. There would be no Site-41 and no division afterwards. Nothing any of the escaping infectious staff did could have any effect on the real world. It's the wrong machine. It can't destroy or contain 3125 or even injure it. All it can do is sterilize today's outbreak. The other symptoms will persist. 50 or 10 or 5 years from now, or maybe 1 year, or maybe tomorrow, 3125 will return, bringing with it its MK-class end-of-the-world scenario. For context, MK-class means end of human consciousness. Basically, that human consciousness is snuffed out and replaced with something else. Human civilization will be entirely eradicated as an abstract concept and be replaced with something unimaginably worse. There will be no one to fight it. Class C has been in her system long enough now that she knows for a fact she has irreversible brain damage. There is no antidote. She'll be lucid for another hour, then spend the remaining 2 or 3 hours of her life vegetative. That's right, she thinks. It's almost a relief. This is good. This is right. I've survived too long. I forgot what universe this was. For a while I thought maybe this was the universe where we win sometimes. She drops the ray gun with a clatter, sinks to her knees, lies down, and waits for either death or a better idea. A being superficially resembling Paul Kim arrives at the outer airlock door. It examines the airlock uncomprehendingly for a few moments, then finds the keycard slot. It hunts methodically through Kim's pockets, then remembers the keycard around its neck. In the next room, the being, which is not Paul Kim, finds Wheeler unconscious with the ray gun dropped beside her. There's also a military truck, which it disregards. Not Kim lets its keycard fall from its fingers and scoops up the ray gun. It turns back to face the airlock and fires, punching fat cylindrical holes in the white metal of the inner door until it's gone, then the outer door too, breaching the hermetic seal. A faint smile returns to Not Kim's face as 3125 and its familiar comforting signals flood into the bunker. Remember, this is one of only 2 places in the universe that was hermetically sealed to block out 3125's influence. And now it's in, and it will never be removed again. A dozen more non-people are arriving by freight elevator, former Anti-Memetics Division's bodies. I found her, Not Kim calls out to her. It drops the ray gun where it's standing, as if it simply forgot that it had been carrying anything, and pulls out its knife again. It holds the knife between 2 fingers in a casual, offhand sort of way, as if it were a pencil or a screwdriver. I don't want to say too much, because this writing really kind of just spells it out perfectly. The infected non-people gather with Not Kim around Wheeler, looking down at her with alien expressions of disgust or pity or malice. Why isn't she opening up properly? Someone asks. She can't meet them unless she wants the signals. Start with her eyes, says someone else. It'll make the rest of her easier to correct. Not Kim leans down to start work, then hesitates, its knife a few centimeters from Wheeler's eye. She's whispering something, so quietly that only it can hear clearly. None of this happened, Paul, she says. You and I never existed. There is no Anti-Memetics Division. There's a sharp click as the bomb finishes its powering up sequence. Nobody in the room can hear this but Wheeler. Nobody in the room can perceive the bomb but Wheeler. All they can see is an empty truck. The world goes black. And that's it. That's the end of the tale. So the best that the brightest mind the Anti-Memetics Division has ever seen, Marion Wheeler, the protagonist, could come up with to combat 3125 was to just wipe the slate clean and hope someone else can figure it out again in the future. One of the 2 rooms perfectly sealed against 3125's influence is now permanently compromised. Marion Wheeler basically never existed. Paul Kim basically never existed. This version of the Anti-Memetics Division basically never existed. Site-41 is a shambles. The site where 3125's containment chamber is a shambles. There is no Anti-Memetics Division, which makes you start to realize that the title of this series had two meanings. At the beginning, it was there is no Anti-Memetics Division, as in nobody knows they exist. Everyone was unaware of them. By nature of the anomalies they deal with. The second meaning, and the much darker meaning, is that now there is no Anti-Memetics Division because they were wiped out. Again, just as every other version of this division was before it. They encountered 3125, they tried to stop it, and it got to them first. And the only thing they could do was either wipe their memories or be eradicated. In this case, sort of both. And that's it. Maybe another version of the Anti-Memetics Division will have a better time figuring out how to combat 3125. Maybe it'll take over the world. Who knows? But that's it. That's the end of the series. Bleak. Bleak, very bleak. I guess in concluding this series, what's so interesting to me is how really from early on it's clear that we have no idea how to combat these things. We sort of are stumbling in the dark, figuring out bits and pieces, but by the end of this it is clear that 3125 is something we have absolutely no idea how to fight. And how could we? As soon as we come up with an idea, as soon as we become aware it exists, gone. It's the perfect antagonist. It's the perfect enemy. How can you fight something when as soon as you know it exists, it's already won? Even Marion, even Bart Hughes couldn't figure something out. And now they're gone. Might as well never have existed. And that's There Is No Anti-Memetics Division. Paul Kim's dead, Marion's dead, Bart Hughes is dead, everybody's dead. Yay! Again. Thanks for listening. Now, to be clear, this is not the end of the Anti-Memetics Division as a whole, especially as written by qntm. qntm wrote a second series following the Anti-Memetics Division called 55555, which the chronology is a little funny in this series. It sort of takes place in between tales that were in the first series. Some of it takes place after. If you thought this first series was weird, 55555, oh my god. Parts of it are almost incomprehensible in the best possible way. I haven't even finished it because I got so overwhelmed with information. I'd like to at some point, but not anytime soon. It is a fascinating series, and I highly encourage you to go out and read it yourself. But yeah, it is bizarre. But that concludes There Is No Anti-Memetics Division, at the very least. We've finished this series, this short series of 5 tales, which I believe is one of the best things to come out of the SCP Wiki. To take a seemingly pretty simple concept from early on in the Wiki, like anti-memes, and to spin a tale about them, to make compelling characters to follow, to make it still as interesting as it was when it was first written about, while also expanding on the concept, making it clear that there's not just one kind of anti-meme, they take all sorts of forms, is brilliant. And Marion Wheeler, as a point-of-view character, is one of the most compelling protagonists in anything on this website, not much less any piece of fiction I've ever read. I think it's brilliant, and I think what qntm does in the way of characterization, in the way of making a very abstract concept like antimemetics understandable and terrifying, even though it's not possible, is incredibly impressive. And I don't know. I don't have much else to say other than I think it's a masterpiece. Also, fun fact, you can buy it. You can buy a physical book of this thing. Yeah, you can get a hardcover or a paperback. Or just a paperback. But still, you can get a paperback of this thing. I'll put the Amazon link in the description. But it's got a pretty neat looking cover, in my humble opinion. This is the cover. Let me open it in a new tab so you can see the whole thing. This is the book cover. I think, I'm not positive, I think this book might also cover 55555. I'm not sure. Let's see. There's no mathematics division. That's okay. But yes, if you want, you can buy this as a book. I might do that at some point, if only to give money to this guy, because qntm is a fantastic author. But yeah, that's about all I got for today and for this series. It's just brilliant. Next week, I've been trying to figure out where to go from here, because it's kind of difficult to suddenly shift gears. But I was thinking I might go in depth on a group of interest. But which one is the question? That is the question, as always. I think Church of the Broken God could be a lot of fun. So the Church of the Broken God is a group of interest relating to machinery and wanting to resurrect their god, the broken god, Mechan, who is this very large, like this supposedly creator god, sort of deistic thing. Let me see if I can find some good articles. Oh, there's a lot of them. Okay. Let's do... Hang on. Early SCP, early Broken God articles. Let's see. Let's see. Give me just a moment. Give me just a moment. Boop, 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 boop. Okay, that doesn't really help me. Just a second. Sorry. I don't mean for there to be such a pause. Come on. Oh, here we go. Here we go. So 39. Okay. All right. So, what I'm going to suggest, we're going to be delving into the Church of the Broken God next week. And I know most other weeks we've had just one, maybe two articles to read. This week, I'm going to give you 4. You don't have to read all of them. I'm putting them in the chat. And they are a pretty good primer to the Church of the Broken God. They are SCP-217, Clockwork Virus, SCP-271, I forget the name of it, this metallic disc, SCP-882, which is this big gear system, and 1139, which is this weird language affecting thing. I don't want to say too much more about any of these, so that you can read them and enjoy them for yourself. These are all very early articles, but they all do a very good job of establishing what the Church of the Broken God is, what their goals are, how they operate. And we'll go more in depth about their lore next week. But yeah, that about does it for today. So next week, read SCP-217, 271, 882, and 1139. But yeah, that's going to do it for us today. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this breakdown of the Anti-Memetics Division series. And yeah, I'll see you